In 2013, I first became aware of the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. Formerly known as the Texas Bigfoot Research Conservancy, the group was based in the Lone Star State, but had members all over the country. I'd learned about the group through a podcast called The Bigfoot Show, which was hosted by a member of the NAWAC named Brian Brown. I liked Brian's level-headed, often skeptical approach to the subject, so when he began filling episodes with stories about unusual activity taking place in a location known as Area X, it piqued my interest. Over the next few years, I and the podcast's myriad listeners followed Brian as he went from skeptic to ardent defender of the existence of Bigfoot. I began emailing Brian questions about X and wood apes in general, and soon we were exchanging phone calls and texts relating to our interest in the subject and, more importantly, my interest in X. Over the years, my fascination with the subject had never waned, but I'd recently been finding myself growing more and more skeptical of the actual physical reality of such a creature. It wasn't that I hadn't spoken to dozens of believable witnesses or experienced some strange occurrences for myself, but in the 4 years I'd been making movies, I came to find that I had more questions than answers. Maybe I'd find those answers in Area X.
Yeah.
Those are eyes, dude.
It's gone, huh? It's gone.
Yeah, we're here in Area X, which is located in the Ouachita mountain range here in southeastern Oklahoma.
Can you talk about the genesis of this place? How did you guys find it? Who decided this was
sure thing.
where to go?
Alton originally found this place by just doing some basic old-fashioned field research. He opened up a map and he looked and he tried to figure out, if I was an elusive wild animal that didn't want to hang around people, where would I go? And he basically drew a circle and started driving around that circle trying to find a place to try to see if there were apes present. And there was a bit of they sort of lucked into it. He met a guy who knew a guy, basically, who told him about this place, because they had stories. They've had cabins in here for years. And so there were stories from that family. They've been coming in here for quite a long time, hunting and things like that. I mean, they didn't spend a lot of time in here, but they'd had vocalizations. There had been a sighting of what looked like a chimpanzee up in a tree. One of them was hunting and saw it swinging around up in a tree. So there's just a series of stories from them. And of course, in this region, this part of the country, there's stories going back 150 years or more of people experiencing encounters with what appear to be large bipedal apes.
My reason for making the trek to Oklahoma was twofold. I wanted to see or experience something for myself, something that might persuade me these creatures exist. It was Brian's stories of almost constant activity involving wood apes that had made me want to make the trip in the first place. From direct sightings of the creature to remarkable vocalizations, rock throwing from unknown assailants, and wood knocks, the group had been documenting occurrences on a scale unlike any other Bigfoot group of which I was aware. I also wanted to document the day-to-day operations and get a feel for how the activity that did occur was cataloged and examined by the NAWAC, and figure out who these people are that spend so much of their time trying to scientifically prove to the world that Bigfoot exists. Unlike most organizations who search for Bigfoot, these people don't just spend a random few hours wandering the forest looking for evidence. They spend up to 7 days at a time in the woods in 4 to 8 person shifts for over 6 months in a place with documented ape activity. Like Jane Goodall, but the apes are 7 feet tall and walk on 2 huge feet.
I think the biggest differentiation point between the NAWAC and other groups of people that do this, primarily it's discipline. It's a great deal of teamwork. We have a group that is very tightly knit. We have great leadership. We have clear goals, and those are established and communicated every single year. So we're able to put teams into the field all summer long over a period of several months, which is just something that no other group can do that I'm aware of.
What surprised me first about Area X was that it's so isolated. Buried deep in the valley, X is a 2.5-hour drive down an ungodly, rough, dirt gravel road that can only be traveled by 4-wheel drive trucks or all-terrain vehicles. And once you're down in the valley, the overwhelming sense that you are completely alone sets in. The leaf canopy is so thick that in some areas of the forest you can't see 5 feet beyond the path. And in the midst of this jungle-like environment sits base camp.
I think this area is probably the most remote site, the most remote area east of the Rocky Mountains. The actual Ouachita Mountains are about 300 miles across from east to west. From north to south, probably 100, 150 miles. And so it's this nice little pocket that's situated, you know, like I said, along the border of Arkansas and Oklahoma.
I never would have conceived that this environment is possible in Oklahoma. I'm familiar with western Oklahoma, which is plains. And this is, it's like an inland rainforest. They get over 70 inches of rain per year. It all used to be hardwood forests, but not anymore. Unfortunately, that's what's happening throughout America. You know, in the United States, we are losing 6,000 acres per day of open land is being developed, and not just taken away, but changed and fragmented. And this is one of the last vestiges in this area for certain that hasn't.
There are areas that we drove through for years getting here that were thick, multi-species forests that have been clear-cut and replanted with a single species of tree that grows as quickly as possible so they can come back and harvest it again. That's not an environment, that's a farm. And animals depend on a rich ecosystem that don't exist in a cornfield, and that's exactly what those forests are. If there's one kind of tree growing for as far as you can see, that is essentially a cornfield. You're not going to find an ecosystem in a cornfield.
The drive into Area X took us through some of the clear-cut sections of forest that Brian had talked about, and one thing that struck me was the lack of wildlife compared to the valley where I would spend most of my time. While occasional deer or squirrel might wander through the newly planted pine forests, the log sections of these wild lands stand in stark contrast to the natural beauty of the untouched portions of the region. I'd never looked at Bigfoot as an endangered species, and maybe they aren't, but to see the abrupt change from natural growth hardwoods to pine forests brought to the forefront the conservancy aspect of the NAWAC.
The mission of the NAWAC is it's conservancy. We love this animal. We know it exists, and he has the right to exist, but he's not going to be able to exist if there's no trees or resources for him to exist within and from.
The North American Wood Ape Conservancy, or the NAWAC, is just a very diverse group of individuals from across the continent, really, that brings a great amount of knowledge together and forms this pool of resources with a common goal, a common interest, and that is to see this thing brought into the light of the world so that it can be properly recognized by government and science, and so that it can be properly protected as well as its habitat.
We have seen everything there is to see. I mean, I've been on teams where the rock throws, where you're just done. You're just like, okay, we're at 100 rock throws in the last hour, and I'm done.
One of the most interesting and frankly inexplicable examples of that is what we call the rain of rocks, where we had some team members in a cabin not too far from here up the valley. They would hear it sounded like a rain of debris, as if something was outside the cabin throwing whatever could scoop up off the ground into the air and having it fall down on the cabin's roof. whatever was doing it, whatever was making that happen, whatever animal was conducting this, as soon as there was any indication that we were awake or moving around, it would take off.
Wood knocks, vocalizations, whistling. Slamming the sides of tents and of the cabins. Feeling like you're being watched and always having something. If there's one, there's two. There's two, there's probably three. Because they're always watching us and trying to see what it is that we're doing.
I've had several sightings here, the two that we saw run up the hillside. And then later on that week, I saw a large reddish brown colored one walking through the sunlight. It was clear that it was a live animal, the way that the sun glistened off of its fur.
Well, we believe that they're apes because of their behaviors. We have very good, well-documented behaviors of what chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas all can do and what they're capable of, what their mannerisms are. That the fact that Bigfoot is large isn't necessarily the issue, but more or less that it's bipedal. It has probably has opposable thumbs. Those are in the ape family.
There's actually a great deal of parallels between observed ape behavior and what we've experienced and what people all across the country have experienced with wood apes, which I think is one of the most sort of compelling pieces of evidence in that this is just another species of apes like the ones we've already identified around the world.
Homo sapiens sapiens are completely different due to brain size, fire use, artifact creation, all those things that go with culture, versus what this likely is probably in the orang family, is what I would guess, somewhere in that realm. And so there's no other category it would fit in.
Our mission here is to establish these animals as scientific fact, and the way that you do that in biology is by producing a specimen. A lot of people find an incongruity in the logic of saying that we're trying to protect this animal by killing one. But the reality is, until we establish these animals as an absolute scientific fact, their environment will not be protected. They will not be an animal that anyone takes seriously. The people who can actually make a difference in their lives, in maintaining habitat for them, will not pay attention.
Why are you trying to kill one instead of taking a really convincing video or photo of them?
Well, science requires a specimen anytime a new species is listed. Anytime a new species is discovered, it has to have a specimen because it has to be independently verified. It has to be poked. It has to be prodded. It has to be tested. You can't do that with a photograph, particularly a species that is unique as this one is.
And so our job is to bring that one specimen, scientifically, not for profit, is given to science freely. Science is going to research it, do its DNA, and then give that information to the public for free.
One of the biggest projects mounted by the NAWAC in the last handful of years was compiling all the data they'd collected over their time in X into a document titled the Ouachita Project Monograph. Detailing key events and evidence gathered, the monograph is page after page of fascinating evidence for the existence of an unknown creature roaming the Oklahoma forests. In the monograph, one of the biggest bombshells relates to what the group dubbed Tag 7 and how it might relate to the behavior of a flesh and blood animal has implications for the Bigfoot subject as a whole.
So we have a field biologist in the group who brought to our attention a technology that is used in biology in research, field research, using radio telemetry, radio tags. And then you use radio telemetry to track the motion of these animals, to see where they go, what their ranges are, things like that. We had a member who was able to take the tag technology and integrate it with a system with the string traps so that if an ape walked through these string traps, the tag would affix itself to the animal. Essentially, the animal would self-tag itself. But that's what we did. The string trap was actually very near the cabin we were staying in. It walked through the trap, the tag affixed itself. But over the course of several months, we were able to track that animal for miles around. It had a range. We were picking up signals much further away than we were expecting, and it really helped us establish a working idea of how large the range is for at least that animal that tagged itself.
One of the key ways the NAWAC is looking to prove the existence of the creature is by collecting a body. Kill or no kill is a debate that has raged within the Bigfoot community as far back as Renee DeHinden and Peter Byrne. For decades, investigators have fought it out over whether or not a body of a Bigfoot is needed to prove that the creature exists. It's something that an outsider to the subject or ardent skeptic might never even consider, but should Sasquatch exist, being the one who pulls the trigger to prove it would leave an impression that might never fade.
Originally from Northeast Texas, served the United States Air Force Intelligence, 6 years active duty, 2 years in the reserve, have a degree in history, bachelor's degree. I now work in the financial industry, pays well, allows me to do this sort of thing. That's sort of my background. When I go out into the field to actually try to collect one, I actually prefer to go out by myself. I like to proceed as though I'm hunting conventionally, like a turkey hunter. A turkey hunter generally camos from head to toe, hunts in a concealed blind. The whole time I'm here, really, I am focused on what I have to do, on why I'm here, and that is to collect one of these things, to put one down, to put it on a slab, so that science can look at it and say, and eat its big bowl of crow that I'm going to serve to it, and can say, you were right. And so I'm so totally focused on that while I'm here, and particularly when I'm out in the field.
This is Echo 1. All teams, I just heard a impact sound. My judgment, to the west.
Within the first few hours of arriving inside Area X, we had a startling string of events unfold involving Daryl Collier. Shortly after leaving Daryl at his position in the forest, he began radioing in that he was seeing movement through his scope about 70 meters ahead of him. As this was happening, we had begun to hear movement and what sounded like distant vocalizations somewhere in the direction of the camp. We began working our way back in the direction of the sounds when Daryl's account of what was happening at his location began to intensify.
His head bulked up just slightly, and it was conical shaped. I could see the slits for eyes. Did not see the mouth or nose. It was obscured underneath. Telling you that was an
He could see its eyes, he could see its nose, he couldn't really see its mouth through the foliage, but he said he saw the head and shoulders of this ape. And so what we've been doing since then is he's been listening, he's been watching for it, and he hasn't seen it until just now. But we've been hearing some wood knocks. He heard a wood knock. It sounds like there's knocks happening on both sides of him, so towards us, in between he and us, and then on the other side of him, which potentially could be an attempt to get him to move. So we're gonna try going down the trail again, see if we can get something to move or
Take your radio.
displace itself,
That radio.
see what happens.
That noise is good, dragon. Those are all
Okay, Daryl, tell me
energy.
what happened. You were still hunting west of the Bass Trail, were you not?
I don't know, how long was I there? Hour and a half, 2 hours?
Something about that.
And then I started hearing a squirrel barking up the mountain behind. You know, I started thinking, okay, Squirrels don't bark at nothing. They bark because there's something that is alarming them. There's no way he was barking at me. I was totally still. I was concealed, totally camoed.
You're too far away anyway.
Too far away. There's something up the mountain that he was agitated about. And, you know, I couldn't really see anything at that point. And then I put it to 6, and that's when I saw like the leaves just like slowly moving, like this. And it was like they would push back. And that's when chills went up my body, because I could see this white mass just moving. And it must have moved 3 or 4 feet, just kind of just like this. And I still can't see a head. What I'm seeing, what I perceive that I'm seeing now is like a shoulder. It's like a line of something, and it's just going like this. And then it just kind of pushes back, and I see the vegetation move, and then I could see like, it looks like a head with 2 eyes, and it's like, just like that, and then I can't see it anymore, and then it's completely still.
Have there been incidents where there were actually shots taken at these things?
There have been several shots taken. Daryl, the famous Echo incident, did and hit one probably in the arm, and that's our biggest regret.
It's July 3rd, 2011, and we had been having quite a bit of activity. We were at a cabin making plans for the evening when we heard a loud bang to the west. I grabbed my weapon, my shotgun, and Travis Lawrence grabbed his rifle. We split up. I went down the main trail, he went down the creek. We wanted to sort of pincer this thing, and I just crept down the trail very quietly. I kept hearing movement ahead of me, but once I stepped around the corner, I saw just a big brown wood ape, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it, walking parallel to this fence of this cabin. And I knew instantly what it was. I knew what I was there to do. So I emptied my weapon. And so I instantly started loading again. And the thought occurred to me, oh, shoot, I just emptied the shotgun. I need to load this thing up again. So I'm walking real quickly, I load it, and here comes Alex. He runs up and he joins me, and we walk up to the spot, and there's no animal there. But there is a trail of tracks and a lot of disturbance in the ground.
And we don't want to wound an animal and injure it unnecessarily. And I know that sounds strange. It's difficult to conceive that to save an environment and a species, we have to take one. But it's not our rules. There has been so many other things to happen to try and convince the scientific public that, you know, unfortunately it's going to take a type specimen. So we do take shots, but they're very, very rare.
So, you know, I was pretty frustrated, pretty disappointed. We did find some blood in a creek right there. We sent that to a lab to get it tested, and they never could confirm that it was even blood, even though our tests done by an MD and a geneticist in our own organization had tested 2 of the rocks for blood, and they confirmed it was blood. And we sent the other 2 up there, and I'm not sure what happened.
I think what strikes me and is not what I expected, is not what you read about in the Bigfoot books or in the documentaries, is the apparent interest they have in us. You know, we believe them to be a primate, we believe them to be a great ape, and so they have these really big, powerful brains relative to the animals around them, and they demonstrate just an insatiable curiosity in us.
And it's not, I don't think they're watching us because they're looking for an opportunity to get one of us. They're watching us because they're curious of what we're doing, trying to figure out what we're doing, and then keeping track of where we are and at, because I think there's other stuff that's still happening. You know, I've had 3 sightings of 4 individuals, one being a small infant, juvenile, that was very small. I know Mom was somewhere nearby while that was happening, and so it's kind of, this foliage is so thick, you really don't know what it is that they're probably watching this right now going, what are they doing? Why is she doing this with her hands, kind of thing, you know?
We've become aware of the fact that we were being observed by these animals. We become aware of it in multiple ways. You either see them on thermal, through a thermal imager, you see their eye shine, you hear them, you see the animals themselves, you smell them. They appear to be incredibly curious and interested in observing us when we're in here.
The North American Wood Ape Conservancy has spent years in this place, but for myself and Adam Dugan, who made the trek in with me, this is all new. We're miles from civilization in an area where you'd have to either be suicidal or crazy to attempt to sneak into, and to hoax a group as heavily armed as this one. At night, when the sun sets, all we are left with is a day's worth of stories about giant apes and the events that have occurred in this exact spot. The group doesn't light a fire, instead preferring to sit in complete darkness, only occasionally turning on a flashlight to call blast various screams into the pitch-black forest surrounding us. It was on this first night that we saw the eye shine watching us from a nearby hill.
See?
It's hard, yeah, it's hard to see the angle that I am.
It's like two eyes.
Yeah.
Those are eyes, dude.
It's gone.
Huh?
It's gone.
The glow from the eyes was clearly visible in a place where no available light could have caused a reflection. These, what appeared to be eyes, seemed to be self-illuminated. Something had been watching, but made a quick getaway into the tree cover, and with it went any hope I had of sleeping through the night.
I mean, it wasn't a lightning bug.
I saw that last night.
Fireflies weren't.
Well, no, it was stationary. When I looked at it and you were looking at it, it was stationary. And then you came over.
Well, it did that because I came over, because I saw it, because I had my headlamp on.
Right.
Here, in Area X, I finally found what I'd been searching for since I'd first heard about this place years before. An encounter with something unknown. Something unidentifiable. Adam Dugan was with me for the event, and his account is identical to mine.
This past summer, when I was in Area X with the NAWAC, on the last night that we were there, at about 2:30 in the morning, I don't remember exactly what time, just as I was starting to fall asleep, we heard a loud, what I believe was a rock hitting the roof of what they call their hooch, which is where all of their equipment is stored underneath. It's a large kind of metal, almost like pull-through garage port type thing. A loud rock hit it. I thought it was a gunshot, possibly at first. It was that loud enough to wake you up from kind of half sleep state. And then immediately after that, it sounded like, the best thing that I can describe is a monkey howling. It was certainly not a wolf or a coyote. I'll tell people, you imagine yourself walking into a monkey exhibit at a zoo, and what you would hear a gibbon howl, except a gibbon that sounded like it was, 600 pounds, enough that you could feel it when it howled, followed by, again, a monkey laughing. All of this happening within a period of, probably 15 to 20 seconds.
I'd always expected an unexplainable event like the rock throw and screams I'd heard inside X to be something terrifying, an encounter with a monster. But the truth is, what I actually experienced seemed to be a natural occurrence, like hearing any one of the owls, squirrels, or other natural animals we'd encountered in a brief time. I'd come into this place feeling like maybe there was no Bigfoot. One scream, one rock throw, had completely moved the needle for me, and in just a couple days inside this place deep in the Ouachita Mountains, I'd come to a greater understanding. Maybe not an understanding of the phenomena I was pursuing, but of others like me who'd become enamored with the creature itself. The North American Wood Ape Conservancy is doing something that has never been done before, pursuing a legend in the most logical way possible. To some, it might seem silly or fanciful to give up weeks of your life to search for Bigfoot, but just consider for a moment that it's real. Consider the greater implications, the impact on humanity, on biology, on ecology, on the logging industry, on the natural world and our understanding of it, the impact on human history.
Do you think we're close to establishing these things?
I do. I feel very close that, I mean, close in geologic time could be the next 50 years and it still be considered close. But yes, I feel like just the work we've already done with Tag 7, with the monograph, is light years beyond what anybody else has produced. Anybody coming, I would normally say, you know, read this book, read this book, read this book. I might say that as well, but I'm going to also tell somebody, read the monograph and learn what we learned from Tag 7.
What, do you have like a personal attachment to this place? How do you feel about this area?
Oh, this place is trying to kill me. Yeah, it's, I'm here, we're both here because we were invited here. This would not have been on our radar screen at all. We do all of our investigation work in California. Just like the river's drying up and becoming a pond, this is what's happened here. They're caught in a small pond, if you will. And so that's why we're here. We're here because the wood ape is here.
Yeah, I mean, I get frustrated with this quite a bit. I get frustrated, I get discouraged quite often because it's extremely difficult. It's not easy at all. When you see one and it's a fleeting glimpse and it's like it's right beyond your fingertips, it just, you know, it's very frustrating. And you get tired of coming in and just coming into this place, and because we do these operations for 130 days, and plus I miss home when I'm here. You know, I love being out here, but at the same time, you know, I love my wife and I like to be with my wife too. It's just something I have to do. I feel like we have an ethical responsibility to ensure that the world knows that this species exists.
I probably think about Area X and the things that have happened, the things that may happen in here. I probably think about it every single day of my life. It's not the kind of place that you forget or just don't think about. I've had some remarkable experiences in here, things that I never thought I would ever experience. And the reality is, every time I come in here, there's an opportunity for something just as remarkable or more remarkable happening at a moment's notice. So yeah, I even though it's a 800-mile drive for me or thereabouts, I never feel like I'm very far from Area X. It's in my thoughts quite often.